ever to double qualify for the Elite Series. He went away, now he came back from Del Rio, Texas. Welcome, Kurt Dove.
Bait stop winding. Instead of the bait coming through the water column and going backwards.
Another one of these right here, plenty of time.
Okay, so and just really wanted to talk a little bit about Hayabusa products, of course, and some hook selection real quick, and just some basic concepts, fundamentals about hook selection and how Hayabusa integrates their engineering into process to help everybody catch more fish, right? Hook being a pretty important part to that process. So first I'm going to talk about a drop shot. Right, so we'll talk about drop shot hooks. Hayabusa's got the DSR 132 HD. They come in size 2, 1, 1.0, and 2.0. And you know, the key with the different sizes, just because you're always using the same size worm, you want to be able to match your hook with the style of technique that you're using. So in this scenario, obviously this is probably one of the more popular styles, but this is a nose hook, right? So just got that nose hook right in there. This is a size 2. I like to use a smaller hook when I nose hook. I just want it to really give a nice action behind this is a Rain's bubbling shaker. Actually, these little ribs hold air, so it helps it stay up in the water column, move real nice. And that little tail back there is the key, I think, to the bubbling shaker. It always has a lot of action. You can see that thing wiggle around. But the nose hook really helps in that process to, you know, give that bait a lot of action. But obviously with drop shotting, there's all kinds of ways that you want to utilize a drop shot. Here's another example, and I use the FPP straight. This is a 2.0. The 2.0 FPP straight has a little monofilament keeper right there, little bait keeper. So that bait keeper really helps when you want to straight shank a worm like this. And what this will do is it helps stabilize the front half of the worm, and it's a totally different presentation. You know, you might look at the nose hook and say, well, that looks pretty similar, but it's gonna show the fish a totally different look. So utilizing different ways to hook the drop shot and using either the nose hook or the FPP straight can go a long way in just showing the fish something a little bit different. That weed guard really, or excuse me, not the weed guard, but that bait keeper really keeps that bait on there. Again, this is the same. This is a 5-inch bubbling shaker. I'm gonna use that bait to demonstrate all these. So, but this is a great technique. Really helps. Finally, you know, you think about drop shotting, and so many different ways to rig it and create a different presentation. And this one is wacky rigging. So I'll wacky rig my drop shot, and I'll upsize the hook. So I'll go from like a size 2 when I'm using the nose hook, and I'm going to upsize it to the 2.0 when I go to the wacky. It's just going to give a little bit better bite, but utilizing the right hook in all these kind of different scenarios is really going to help your performance when you get bites. So those are just a couple different ways to rig a drop shot with some different hooks, obviously from Hayabusa. The next hook I want to show you real quick is our swim bait hook. And this kind of goes into some of the engineering. With the Hayabusa swim bait hook, we've got the kind of the traditional spiral bait keeper. So you just kind of twist that, obviously, swim bait on there. But I want to show you something really neat. If you look at a lot of swim bait hooks, the weights tend to be down toward the hook bend down here. They tend to be either in the middle or down toward the bend. And what really helps with the action of the bait with the Hayabusa is that weight is front faced. It's forward facing. So that gives you a couple different things. When you throw the bait and the bait's coming to you, that forward facing weight is going to help drive that bait and keep it down, like heading down into the water column. Whereas if the weight was in the back, you'd be just pulling the bait up and it doesn't stay down in the water column quite as much. So that's one cool little engineering piece. The second thing that I really like of this forward-facing weight is that when I drop the bait or I stop winding, instead of the bait coming through the water column and going backwards because the weight is behind the hook, with the Hayabusa swim bait hook, the bait is going to go forward. So it's going to dive appropriately. So it's going to dive nose first. If take this back in one of the canals here or something like that, and you try, a couple different styles of hooks, you'll see the difference of how the bait falls with the Hayabusa swim bait hook. This is the 958 weighted, comes in sizes 1.0 all the way up to 7.0, and they're all also have fluorine coating, which is basically similar to like a Teflon coating. So when you get that strike, it's going to enable that hook to really kind of release effectively from the hook, so that you can have that good hookup ratio. So that's the Hayabusa swim bait hook. Man, I'm going to go into a little bit of like the age-old question: round bend or EWG, right? What's your preference?
I go both ways depending on what the fish are doing.
You go both ways. I have a little system that I like to kind of put in place, and I'm going to throw the straight shank into this mix too, and we'll talk about all three of them. But basically, you've got your straight shank. My straight shank hook I want to use when I'm pitching and flipping short casts. I don't generally use my straight shank hook when I'm making long casts, unless I'm winding a bait through no cover or over the top of vegetation or something of that case. But anytime I'm going to come into contact with cover with this particular hook, I want to make sure it's through short casts, pitching, flipping, those kind of presentations. The reason why is because this particular hook with the straight shank, anytime you hit cover, it's going to keep hitting that plastic, and eventually that hook point's going to show just a little bit, and you're going to be catching more brush than you are going to be fish. But it is the most effective style of hook in a short cast scenario because of the fact that it does come out so easily when you get a strike. Okay, so straight shank hook, short casting, and you can use it in heavy cover, pitching and flipping. That's the best hook you're going to want to use. Or if you're winding a worm, casting long distance in an area where you don't have a whole lot of cover. So straight shank hook for that. Then a little bit more cover, a little bit more brush, making long casts, I'm going to go to the round bend hook. I'm going to go to the round bend hook, and I'm just going to sling it on one of these bubbling shakers real quick, since that's what I have in front of me. But I'm going to go to that round bend hook, and the reason why is similarly to the same point that I made with the straight shank. The round bend hook is going to give you a little bit more opportunity to get that bait through cover. Okay, make sure you rig that up straight. That's a totally different seminar, but rigging plastic straight is really, really important. But anyway, when I'm fishing this through some medium cover, brush piles, things such as that nature, I'm really wanting to use the round bend offset hook. If the cover gets really, really thick, I'm going to go then to the EWG hook. This is the hook I'm going to use when it's really thick cover, huge brush piles. I'm just dragging through, brush, stumps, and just coming into a lot of contact with cover, a real gnarly area. The reason I'm going to use the EWG in that scenario is very similar to, kind of going down that list from the straight shank to the round bend, and that's because it's going to have the most resistance to come out of the bait when you're dragging it through those things. Just the way that EWG works, the point running with the Hayabusa, it's running just above that hook eye, the tie eye. So it works great when you're working really, really heavy cover. So I think it's important to realize, obviously, too, what size line are you using? Are you going to use a medium wire hook or a heavy wire hook? Even if looking at Hayabusa, with every product they make, is we have either the heavy wire round bend or the medium wire round bend. So if you're using 10, 15, 12-pound test, get away with the medium. Using 15, 17, heavier cover, maybe up to 20, go with the heavier wire hook. So make sure you're using the right hook for the cover that you're fishing and the presentation that you're trying to provide. Same with the EWG hook. And with the EWG hook, I can use the heavy wire hook even for top water like toad fishing. Works great in that situation. I like to go to a medium wire hook if I'm throwing a fluke style bait, something like that, because you're gonna have to pull that hook into the fish as it's moving who knows which way, after it eats. So you want to have that medium wire hook so it's easy to pull that into the fish. So those are a couple things real quick on the hook front. I'm going to pull another one out of the box here just because I want to get a little bit deeper into the engineering of the bait. Now this is kind of getting real detailed, but that's what Hayabusa does in their engineering. They get really detailed. You can see this, standard, this is a Worm 929 trailer hook. It's got an interesting little bend down right here, and that's for explicit reason. Put this onto a bait like this. We use little beads, little black beads. I'm not going to put them on here right now. It takes a little bit extra time, and I just really want to show you the engineering of the hook. But the beads you can use, you can slide one on before you put the trailer hook on, and then one after if you want to hold it into a specific area of the hook. Or you can just put one after you put everything on, and it'll just kind of float freely like that. So we got this trailer hook on there, and I was kind of mentioning the turn down. And the reason for that is when you're driving this, whatever it is, obviously in this case a spinner bait, but if you're driving a buzz bait through the water, whatever you've got, maybe even a chatter bait, if you've got a chatter bait that you put a trailer hook on, it's the tendency is going to be for that trailer hook to not always stay just exactly straight like that. The tendency is for that hook to just kind of edge down a little bit on the bait's hook. And as you got that trailer hook, that's why it's turned down, so that when it is edging down, now what happens? That hook is exactly straight. So when the fish actually bites, in other models of hooks that don't have this turn down, the hook face is actually open. Whereas now when you're driving this one through the water, even though it's slid down a little bit or it's just facing down because of gravity through the water, the hook is in the correct position to make a good hook up with a short striking fish. So this also has the coating on it. Pretty much every hook that Hayabusa makes, from EWG, round bend, the trailer hook, the swim bait hook, they all have the coating on it, which I think really helps. You see a lot of companies doing that these days, but Hayabusa has been doing it for a really long time. So anyway, just a cool deal with the trailer hook. I wanted to show you little tips like that about the engineering and the process of what they look into when developing a hook. So, and I could keep going on forever. You guys got any questions? There's so much stuff. Wacky hooks. I think the biggest thing with hooks in general, I'll just kind of leave it with this for right now, is matching the technique that you're using with the proper hook. You take a wacky hook. You don't want to use a heavy wire wacky hook when you're doing an 8 and 10 pound test. Use a heavy wire wacky hook when you're using 12, 15 pound test. Always look at, if you're using 8, maybe some guys using 6 or 4. They make the appropriate, hooks for those situations, and make sure you match those up, and you'll have a lot better success, and you won't have any failures. And I think that's where bass fishing is going these days. Bass fishing is going to such a technique specific process. There's so many different styles of anglers and what they're trying to do, and all the manufacturers are really dialing in those. So it's not just walking down the aisle anymore and buying a hook or buying a plastic. It's understanding what that particular product is going to give you for the style and techniques that you're fishing. And you never know. Like today, we could walk outside and it's, 55 degrees and no wind, and you're going to have to downsize to get some bites. And tomorrow it could be blowing 25, and you can use some big baits to get those bites. So every day is going to be a little bit differently. Have your tackle backs ready accordingly for those different types of presentations that you're going to need to make.